Welcome to the She Can't Quit podcast. I'm Britt Jensen, a business and marketing strategist, multi-passionate entrepreneur, and a mom of 3. I fell into the entrepreneur world by chance, and from that day on, I never looked back. Nearly a decade later, 2 businesses, and a lot of life in between, I found a love for sharing my journey, and I've made it a mission to share about the life of raising businesses and babies, from the messy moments behind the scenes to the magic happening in between. Grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine while we chat all things marketing, business, and motherhood. Because you know that vision you have is something you just can't quit. Hey, what's up? It's Britt, and welcome back to another episode of the She Can't Quit podcast. I'm so excited you're here because we're doing a little mindset work today. Today, I'm sharing with you the 5 mindset shifts you need to have in order to be successful as a CEO. These might not be what you're expecting. I know that a lot of things have been said in the social media world, what the gurus are saying, but these are things that are tried and true to me and that I live through every single day. So I thought that I would share with you. I put them all on a list and I'm going to share with you so that you can implement them in your life. And maybe it's exactly what you're needing to hear today. So I hope that this episode gives you a little bit of inspiration and a little sparkle in your step. Okay, mindset shift number 1. If you don't know how to do it, learn it. So many times we get caught up in the fact and we're waiting for the answers or getting in learning mode. That is something that is so easy to get stuck in. Trust me, I know. And that you want to master this thing. But the thing is, you will learn this as you're doing. The best way you can learn things is as you do. So chapter 1 is so fun to look back on. Don't get me wrong, but it's cringy sometimes. Look back at the first photos that we've all shared on Instagram or any social platform, or the first videos we make, whatever that is, or like stories, or gosh, I used to like over brighten my photos. Look back at those photos, you're like, oh, that's so cringe. That's okay. We're all supposed to have those cringe moments because the more that you do, the more that you grow, the more that you learn, and you can't get to great if you don't go for the bad to get to the good. You have to be bad before you can get to the good, before you can get to the great. And it's something that if you just accept from the beginning and know that that's something that you're supposed to get through, it gets a lot more exciting along the journey rather than just saying, the voice of comparison saying, I'm not good enough, I just need to quit. And so that is mindset shift number 1. If you don't know how to do it, learn it. There's Google, YouTube, there's Skillshare, there's so many things. Or reach out to someone in your niche and say, hey, where did you learn your skills, or what are your best resources? I know that a lot of people won't give away certain things versus I know that boutiques and clothing companies do a lot of research when you pick their products and whatnot, and usually aren't willing to share those things. But when it comes to saying, hey, I'm trying to get into this niche, are there any resources that you can point me to that you really love to learn from? Sometimes it's someone they followed on YouTube, whatever that is. And people are all different. I always love sharing. I have no problem sharing. I have no problem chit-chatting in the DMs. It's probably one of my favorite things because I think we should be a lot more open. There's a lot of gatekeeping when it comes to knowledge in the business world, but I feel like especially as women, especially as moms in business, we should be sharing a lot more with each other. There are a vast amount of resources available. So if you don't know how to do something, go out and learn it. And if you can't find any resources on it, start doing it and see what sticks, just like when you're sticking spaghetti to a wall. The second mindset shift is that you need to be okay with getting uncomfy and doing the things that scare you. There is never going to be a point where you're totally confident 100% going to things. You may teeter on it a bit, or at least I've noticed this from my experience where I'm like, oh, okay, this is good. Like sometimes one of the first times I ever sent out a proposal for social media management, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Okay, I can do this. It feels good. And then all of a sudden I question everything. Or sometimes still after I have consults with new clients, even though I have a full load of agency clients and I've done this for 2 years, I will sit after a call sometimes and replay everything and be like, no, did I say this? Maybe that didn't come off right. Or did I make sure to ask this? Or is this what they were wanting? And I'll question it. And then I have to be like, Britt, no, you know what you're doing. You're 100% in the right field. If they are a good fit for you, then they're going to be a good fit for the agency. And that's okay. Things are going to work out. And I had to get to a point where it was almost like a muscle. If I was scared of doing something, I was like, all right, we're doing it. First time I ever did stories. Now, this was back before Instagram stories was even a thing. This was on Snapchat, but I knew that I needed to grow my social media presence. I was only a mom of one at the time. I think I was newly pregnant with my middle, but I remember just being terrified, like terrified. The first time I did an IG live, terrifying. Also, I think during this time too, the UPS guy came and rang a doorbell during all this. You know what? I always think to myself, what is the worst possible thing that could happen during this? And when you think about it, it's really not that big a deal. And usually by the time that you do this, you're like, wow, that wasn't as scary as I thought it was. And that's usually what it is. Usually the impending feeling or the fear is 10 times worse thinking about doing it versus actually doing it. It's not that scary. So when you put that thought into your mind and when you just learn, you're like, okay, this is uncomfy, but I know that this is aligned with what I want to do. This is part of the process versus leaning back, like what I said with step number 1, saying, this isn't meant for me. I can't do that. That is just pish posh. We don't need that. So that is the second shift that you need to make sure that you have in your mindset and that you're totally on board with doing. Third one is do what works for you. And I actually heard some chatter about this the other day, and I think it's totally something that not a lot of people talk about in this niche. And that is when you first start on your business or social media especially, is that when you first start in your space, you sometimes learn to adapt the people that you follow or like certain mannerisms or personality or feel like you need to match their energy or do certain things you're doing. And most of the time, 99% of the time, this is done subconsciously. This isn't on purpose. There's no ill intent, but they're trying to channel the energy that they're seeing or, sometimes you end up copying a little bit and you feel this pressure to be seen and shown up in that way in order to matter because you think that that's what it's supposed to look like and you see success. So you're like, well, I want to be successful too. Not that you're intentionally copying, but when you do that, it doesn't translate the way that it does for that person that you're watching, that you're consuming. And so it won't stick the same way with your audience. You won't get the results. And the reason you won't is because it's not who you are. So the earlier that you can be your most authentic self and show up the way that you are, the more successful you're going to be. And that is owning who you are. That's owning your quirks. That's leaning into the fact that you are who you are. Even if you're still figuring out along the way, that's okay. That same authentic energy, people can feel. People can feel when it's inauthentic, which is why things will not stick. Sales will not happen. Conversions won't happen. And that growth will ultimately be impeded and you won't find that success that you're wanting. So the earlier that you can be your most authentic self and show up in a way that works for you, if that is not 100% on camera all the time, 100% bubbly and vivacious, if that's not who you are and maybe you're just a little bit more quieter, maybe you're a lot more introverted, do you don't have to show up any other way. So if you are feeling kind of inauthentic, I first want you to look at, one, how much you're consuming versus how much you're creating and in what order you're doing that. Are you consuming before you're creating? Because that will absolutely shift your perspective and your energy. But two, are you showing up in the way that feels aligned for you, or are you maybe having a little bit of energy that's leaking onto you and you feel this need to show up in that way? So take a little bit of a second to sit with that, because those may be the tweaks that you need in order to fix certain strategies. And whether it comes to social media marketing or business strategy, that's a little bonus nugget there for you. It is so important to show up with who you are and show up in a way that is aligned for you and do what works for you. At the end of the day, if it doesn't feel good, now teetering on the fact, like if it scares you, but you know this was aligned with future version of you and you say, that's my highest version of myself, I want to show up that way, do it scared, jump, figure it out later. You'll be able to digest it on the other side. And I promise it's not that scary. But if it ultimately doesn't feel aligned with who you are and the life and the business you're trying to create, not for you, girl. Don't do it. If it doesn't feel good, don't do it. And that's okay. What's going to work for one person may work for somebody else, but it may not work for you, and that's okay. Be okay doing it different, because that's where you're going to find your people who need you to do it different. Okay, next mindset shift. And my overdoers, my overthinkers, my overachievers, this is for you because this is entirely me. And this is what I've been really working on this season, is that momentum is still momentum, even if it's not at the pace you're wanting it to be, that you're craving it to be, or that everyone else is doing. I find myself a lot as I'm pushing for big goals and doing new things, and as there's a big learning curve, that I'm wanting to do so much. But sometimes I struggle with celebrating myself with the simplest things. I caught myself thinking about this yesterday. I always put so much on my to-do list, and I love a good checkbox. Love checking things off the list, but I realized that I have a hard time celebrating anything outside of big things. And let me give you an example. Yesterday, picked my kiddos up from school. I had sent off a proposal that day, checked that off the list, got client content done, checked that off the list, created a content map, checked it off the list, got some engagement done on accounts that I managed, checked it off the list. But then I went and picked up my kids, and I went and got gas afterwards and did a Target pickup. And I was sitting there thinking, there's like 6 other things I need to get done. I'm doing website revamps. There's some things I wanted to do on my socials that I'm trying to implement. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I was like, checking, like, I got gas today. Like, who loves the feeling of a full tank of gas? Like, it feels so, this is like an adult thing. It just feels so good. And I was thinking, why don't we celebrate things like this? Folded a load of laundry, check. Took a nap, check. We get so caught up in these to-do lists that we forget to distinguish, or we over distinguish between what things matter and what don't. But in reality, they all work together. There's no weight that means, well, if I got all my business stuff done, or if I got this done, it means more than me going and filling my tank of gas. Like, no, I still went and did it. And someone who struggles with social anxiety, sometimes going and getting gas, especially with my children, it's a big deal. And I realized that I wasn't celebrating it, and I wasn't taking care of that. So momentum is still momentum, and don't forget that comparison will always be the thief of joy. If you are not celebrating the big and little wins inside and outside of your business, there's something that's unaligned there, and you need a second to shift that mindset a little bit and celebrate the fact that even if you're taking baby steps, even if you're not running, but maybe you're crawling, or maybe you're tumbling along the way, momentum is still momentum, and it's still getting you to your goal. Your business wasn't built in a day. So every day that you do show up, and however that looks like, still matters. And one of the quotes that I always try to tell myself is that even if you showed up at 20% today, your 20% is still more than somebody else's 100. Let that sink in for a bit, because I always try to tell myself, I'm showing up the best way I can today, and that's okay, because that's just how it's going to be, and it's going to be just as important. The last mindset shift that I have for you, and this one people forget, and it's so simple. If you want to build a business, if you want to find success, if you want to own the title of being a CEO, a business owner, you have to treat your business like a business, because if you're not, it's a hobby, which is great. We all love hobbies. And if this is what you want and you just enjoy doing it, own having a hobby, own having a side business. But if you want to build your business to something that's full-time, something that can change your life, something that will give you financial freedom, something that creates an impact in your community, you have to treat it like a business, which means you have to show up every day like it's a business. And I know this will look different for everyone based on what what part of your journey you're at right now, whether you're working a 9 to 5, whether you're trying to scale it to full time, whether you're just starting out, that's okay. Because showing up looks different for everybody, but the energy that you stand in is huge. And that's what I want to focus on with this tip. Because so many times I've caught myself where people are like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I just do this. And I realize a lot of us make ourselves small, especially in the entrepreneur world. And there was a really sweet gal that I met at a networking event, and it always sticks with me because it was the first time where I was like, oh my gosh, she feels the same way too. And she goes, I had to tell myself all the way here that my business is a real business. I've got a tax number. It's legitimate. I work on it every day. She does it full time too. And I was like, oh my gosh, other people feel this way too. And for some weird reason, we like to make ourselves feel small in order to be accepted. I think it's gotten a little bit better as a lot more people, I think after the last few years where people have been stepping into freelancing and working for themselves, there's been a rise on that. And the numbers, if you're thinking about it, girl, they're on your side. So if you haven't jumped yet, jump. But I think that we make ourselves small because it's not very accepted. So we just kind of sweep it under the rug of like, oh yeah, I do this full time, but I kind of do this on the side just a little bit. It's just a little side gig. And you talk it down, but no. What you need to do is, oh yeah, I work for myself. I own a marketing agency and, I really enjoy what I do. I really love it. Or I do this and this, XYZ, whatever that is. Own it, because nobody else needs to accept it but you. Nobody else has to be happy about it but you, because it's your life. So if you realize that you are making yourself smaller, if you are making your business just, oh yeah, it's just this thing I do on the side, like no. Hone that in, figure out wherever you are lacking, whether it's confidence or mindset work, beliefs on your business, or maybe it's that maybe you aren't showing up in the way that you can and know you want to in order to get to where your goals are. Wherever that is, take some awareness, find where that is and start healing it and working on it, and stand in that energy that you are a successful CEO. You are here to crush goals and make it happen and make this vision unfold because it was yours, and do what you were meant to do, and don't let anyone else take that sparkle away from you. It's a big deal. Those are my 5 mindset shifts. I'll repeat them super quick because I know that it can seem like forever since first one. First one is, if you don't know how, learn it. Be okay with getting uncomfy and doing things scared. Do what works for you. Remember, don't listen to your inner meanie girl, and don't compare yourself to anyone else. Do what works for you and what feels aligned for you. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Momentum is still momentum, and don't let comparison to anyone else's journey or the speed of it take that joy away from you. Learn to celebrate it, including all the human moments. If you take a time to process yourself having feelings, check that off the list. If you need a checklist, sometimes I put things on the checklist after I've already done them because, it's great. And the last one, treat your business like a business. If you want to do this, if you want to be a successful CEO, a successful business owner, you have to treat your business like a business and not a hobby. It's a big freaking deal because you're a big freaking deal. So act like it. Those are my 5 tips for you to make a little mindset shift as you step into this. And if you really loved one of these, or if one of them was your favorite or really connected with you, please make sure to screenshot this episode and share which one it was and tag me over on Instagram at the Britt Jensen. And if you haven't already, click the subscribe button on YouTube. Please make sure to come over and say hi and drop a little hey in the comments so that I can connect with you. And please, 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 if you have not left a review on the podcast, please make sure to do that. It only takes a couple seconds, and I really love hearing what you guys are loving. And of course, any suggestions are always welcome for what content that you want on here. But I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast and that it gave you a little bit of inspiration as you continue down your journey. I hope you know I'm cheering you on every single step of the way, and I'll see you next time.